Patrick Rice was 34 years old, and 3 months ago, he lost everything he'd spent a decade building. His marriage, his reputation, and very nearly his sanity. All because of one lie. One carefully constructed, meticulously planned lie that his sister-in-law told with tears streaming down her face at a family dinner, while 23 people watched in horror. But here's what nobody knew that night. What Kayla didn't know. What Patrick's wife Angelina didn't know. What none of them could have possibly known. Patrick had proof. Evidence that would eventually tear apart Kayla's entire story and expose her for exactly what she was. He just didn't discover it yet. In 72 hours, everything would change. The truth would surface in a way that would leave everyone who'd turned their backs on him scrambling for explanations. Patrick was sitting in his apartment, his new apartment, the cramped one-bedroom in a building that smelled like old carpet and broken dreams, when he finally pieced it all together. The timeline was right there in front of him. The bank statements, the hotel receipts, the text messages he'd recovered from their old phone plan, and suddenly every confusing moment from the past 6 months started to make sense. They thought they'd destroyed him. They had no idea what was coming. Let him take you back to where it all started, November 12th, 2024, a Tuesday evening that began like any other and ended with his entire world imploding. Angelina and Patrick had been married for 8 years. They'd met in college. She was finishing her marketing degree, and he was 2 years into his computer engineering program at USC. They weren't rich by any means. Patrick worked as a senior network administrator at a mid-sized tech firm in Los Angeles, pulling in around $93,000 a year. Angelina managed social media for a boutique advertising agency, making $62,000. Combined, they were comfortable. They just bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Pasadena the previous year for $680,000, stretching their budget but making it work. They were planning to start a family soon. They were happy, or at least Patrick thought they were. Angelina's younger sister, Kayla, was 29 and perpetually in crisis mode. She moved through life like a tornado, leaving destruction in her wake and expecting everyone else to clean up the mess. She'd lived with Patrick and Angelina twice over the years. Once after a bad breakup that she claimed blindsided her, but that Patrick suspected she'd caused. And once after losing a job she'd held for only 3 months because she didn't get along with management. Each time Patrick had bitten his tongue, helped pay for her expenses, and watched as she treated their home like a hotel while contributing nothing to groceries or utilities. "She's family," Angelina would say whenever Patrick expressed concern, her voice taking on that defensive edge she always got when it came to her sister. "She just needs time to figure things out. You know how hard it's been for her." But Kayla never figured things out. She just moved from one disaster to the next, always finding someone else to blame, never taking responsibility for the chaos that seemed to follow her everywhere. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Angelina's parents, Robert and Catherine, were renewing their vows after 35 years of marriage. They'd rented out a private room at an upscale Italian restaurant in Beverly Hills. The kind of place with cloth napkins and servers who refilled your water glass before you even realized it was half empty. 23 family members were gathered around a long table, decorated with white roses and gold candles. The warm glow of the candlelight reflected off the wine glasses, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Classical music played softly in the background, just loud enough to add ambiance without overwhelming conversation. Patrick had worn his best suit, the charcoal gray one Angelina had picked out for him last Christmas. Along with the blue tie she said brought out his eyes. He'd been looking forward to the evening. Things had been tense at work lately. Budget cuts were looming, and he'd been putting in 70-hour weeks trying to prove his value to management. He needed this night. A few hours of good food, good wine, and family time. A chance to relax and enjoy himself. He should have known better. He should have noticed the warning signs. Kayla arrived late, as usual. She swept into the room wearing a black dress that was just a shade too dramatic for the occasion, her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders in waves that looked professionally styled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched a tissue in her hand like a prop in a play. Patrick noticed immediately. Kayla was always performing, always seeking attention, And tonight she'd clearly planned something big. There was something in the way she paused in the doorway, making sure everyone had noticed her entrance, before moving further into the room. "Sorry I'm late," she announced to the table, her voice trembling just enough to be noticeable. "I've been dealing with something really difficult. Something I wasn't sure I should even come here tonight and talk about." Angelina immediately stood up, concern flooding her face. She moved toward her sister, her napkin falling from her lap onto the floor. "Kayla, what's wrong? Are you okay? What happened?" Patrick watched as Kayla took a shaky breath, her eyes darting around the table, making sure everyone was paying attention. The conversations around them died down. Silverware clinked to a stop. Even the servers seemed to sense something was about to happen and retreated to the corners of the room. Patrick felt his stomach clench with an inexplicable sense of dread. What she said next changed everything. "I'm pregnant," Kayla whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. She pressed the tissue too, her eyes, her shoulders shaking. "And the father—" She paused, her eyes filling with fresh tears. She looked directly at Patrick, holding his gaze for just a moment too long. "The father is Patrick." The silence that followed was deafening. Patrick felt the world tilt sideways, his stomach dropping as if he'd just stepped off a cliff. Every face at that table turned toward him, his mother-in-law's expression shifting from confusion to horror in the span of a heartbeat, his father-in-law's jaw clenching as his face turned red, Angelina's face going completely white, then flushing with anger so intense it seemed to radiate from her skin. "What?" The word came out of Patrick's mouth barely above a whisper. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "Kayla, what are you talking about? That's insane. Don't act innocent." Kayla's voice rose, cracking with emotion that seemed almost too perfect, too practiced. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. That night in September when Angelina was out of town for that conference in San Diego. You invited me over to the house. You said you were lonely, that you wanted company. You gave me wine, you kept refilling my glass, and then you—" Her voice broke into sobs that racked her entire body. "You took advantage of me. I was drunk and confused, and I didn't know what was happening until it was too late." Patrick stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound harsh and jarring in the shocked silence. "That's insane. That never happened. Kayla, why would you say something like this? Why would you lie about—" "You're a liar!" Angelina's voice cut through the room like a blade. She was standing now too, her face flushed red, her hands trembling with rage. Her wine glass teetered on the edge of the table before crashing to the floor, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "You're a goddamn liar, Patrick. How could you? How could you do this to me? With my sister? Angelina, please listen to me." Patrick reached toward her, but she recoiled as if he'd tried to strike her. "No!" Angelina grabbed her purse from the back of her chair, her movements jerky and violent. "I'm done listening to you. I'm done with all of it. 8 years I wasted on you, and this is what you do?" Robert stood up, his face dark with rage, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Get out," he said to Patrick, his voice low and dangerous, barely controlled. "Get out right now before I do something I'll regret. Get out of this restaurant before I have you thrown out." Patrick looked around the table desperately, searching for one friendly face, one person who might question this insanity. His brother-in-law, Tom, was staring at him with disgust. Angelina's cousin, Sarah, who'd always been friendly to him at family gatherings, had turned away completely. His own Aunt Margaret, who'd come down from San Francisco specifically for this dinner, was shaking her head in disappointment. Not one person questioned Kayla's story. Not one person asked for his side. Not one person even hesitated before believing the worst of him. "I didn't do this," Patrick said, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears, drowned out by the accusations flying around the room. "Angelina, you have to believe me. I could never—" "Leave," Catherine said coldly, her voice like ice. She'd always been warm to Patrick before, treating him like a son, bragging about him to her friends, including him in family traditions. Now she looked at him like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Leave before we call the police. before we have you arrested for what you've done to this family." "I haven't done anything." Patrick's voice rose desperately. "This is crazy. I wasn't even—" But nobody was listening. Kayla was being comforted by Angelina and their mother, both women wrapping protective arms around her. Other family members were standing now, their voices rising in anger, in condemnation. Someone was already on their phone. Patrick couldn't tell if they were actually calling the police or just threatening to. The walk to his car felt like a death march. Patrick's legs felt like lead, his vision tunneling until all he could see was the path in front of him. He could still hear voices from inside the restaurant. Angelina crying, Kayla being comforted, his name being spat out like poison. I can't believe him. After everything Angelina did for him. He always seems so quiet, but you never really know people. The words followed him out into the cold November night. He sat in the driver's seat for almost 20 minutes, unable to move, unable to think, unable to process what had just happened. The cold leather against his back made him shiver. Or maybe that was just shock. His hands trembled so badly he couldn't get the key into the ignition at first. His phone buzzed, then again and again. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silence of his car. Text messages flooded in like an avalanche. Angelina's best friend. "I always knew there was something off about you. Angelina deserves so much better." His brother-in-law. "Stay away from this family. If I see you near my kids, we're going to have a problem." Even his own cousin, who'd always been close to him. "Can't believe you'd do this to Angelina. You're disgusting." Patrick drove home in a daze, his mind numb, operating on autopilot. Their home. The house they'd bought together, painted together, filled with furniture they'd picked out on weekend trips to various stores. But when he got there, pulling into the driveway at 10:47 p.m., the locks had already been changed. There was a note taped to the door in Angelina's handwriting, her distinctive looping script that he'd always found beautiful. "Your things will be dropped off at a storage unit. The address will be texted to you. Don't contact me. Don't come to my work. Don't try to see me. My lawyer will be in touch." He'd lost his house keys in the chaos of leaving the restaurant, Patrick realized. Not that it mattered now. The locks were different anyway. He tried his key just to confirm, watched it fail to turn, then stood there on his own doorstep feeling more lost than he'd ever felt in his life. Before we go on with this great story, kindly like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are new stories every single day. Here's a soft challenge for you. There's a twist coming that changes everything. Drop your theory in the comments. Let's see if anyone can figure it out before it happens. Patrick spent that first night in a budget motel off the freeway, one of those places with flickering neon signs and rooms that rented by the hour. He lay on top of scratchy sheets that smelled like industrial bleach and old cigarette smoke, staring at the water-stained ceiling with its mysterious brown patterns. His mind raced through every interaction he'd ever had with Kayla, searching for some explanation, some hint of why she would do this. What had he done to make her hate him enough to destroy his entire life? Had he offended her somehow? Rejected her in some way he hadn't even noticed? Then it hit him, sometime around 3 a.m., when sleep still wouldn't come. September, the month Kayla claimed it happened. Angelina had gone to a marketing conference in San Diego. That part was true. She'd been gone for 3 days, September 14th through 17th. But Patrick hadn't been home alone. He'd been in Seattle for a major network security audit at one of their company's satellite offices. A critical project he'd been planning for months. He'd flown out early morning on the 14th and hadn't returned until late on the 17th. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and pulled up his email, searching frantically for the confirmation numbers, praying he hadn't deleted them. There they were. September 14th through 17th, his flight to Seattle left at 6:45 a.m. on the 14th from LAX. He landed back in LA at 11:30 p.m. on the 17th. There was no possible way, physically impossible, that he could have been at his house with Kayla during that time. Relief flooded through him so intensely he actually felt dizzy. He had proof, concrete, undeniable, time-stamped proof. Flight manifests, hotel receipts from the Cascade Inn where his company had booked him, meal receipts from Seattle restaurants, Photos on his phone with geotags showing he was at the Cascade medical offices performing the audit. He called Angelina immediately, his fingers fumbling with the phone. It went straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He tried a third time. Voicemail. She'd turned off her phone or blocked his number already. He texted her, Angelina, I have proof I wasn't even in LA that week. I was in Seattle for work. I have plane tickets, hotel receipts, dozens of witnesses. Please just look at the evidence before you do something we can't undo. Please. His message showed as delivered but never read. The blue check marks that would indicate she'd seen it never appeared. He tried calling her parents. The phone rang twice before he heard the distinctive sound of being sent to voicemail immediately. They'd blocked him. He tried messaging Angelina on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every social media platform they shared. Blocked on all of them. Every single one. Like he was a virus they needed to quarantine. Nobody wanted to hear his side of the story. They'd already made up their minds. They'd already decided he was guilty, and nothing he said would change that without someone actually looking at his evidence. The next morning, Patrick showed up at his office with dark circles under his eyes and his clothes rumpled from sleeping in them. He hadn't even showered, hadn't thought to bring a change of clothes to the motel. His boss, Gerald Thompson, called him into his office within an hour of arrival. Patrick barely had time to sit down at his desk before Gerald's administrative assistant appeared. He needs to see you now. Patrick, we need to talk, Gerald said, closing the door. The man looked uncomfortable, his usual friendly demeanor replaced with something distant and professional. He sat down behind his desk instead of in the casual seating area where they usually discuss projects, putting physical distance between them. I received some disturbing information yesterday evening. Several calls, actually. Patrick's heart sank. He felt his breakfast, the stale muffin he'd forced down at the motel, threatened to come back up. Let me guess. Kayla called. Your sister-in-law, yes, along with several other members of your wife's family. Gerald adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit Patrick had noticed over the 4 years they'd worked together. Look, I don't want to get involved in personal matters, and normally I wouldn't. But this is serious, Patrick, really serious. We have a harassment policy here. We have standards of conduct. If what they're saying is true, it's not true, Patrick interrupted, his voice firm despite the exhaustion weighing him down. Gerald, I wasn't even in California when she claims this happened. I was in Seattle for the Cascade medical audit. You assigned me to it yourself. You signed off on my travel authorization. Gerald's expression shifted slightly, confusion replacing some of the discomfort. You're sure about the dates? Completely sure, September 14th through 17th. I can show you my travel receipts, my hotel booking, my flight confirmations, everything. I have photos geotagged in Seattle. I have meal receipts. I can give you the names of everyone I worked with up there who can verify I was present the entire time. Gerald, there are probably 50 pieces of documentation proving I wasn't even in the same state when this supposedly happened. Okay, Gerald said slowly, leaning back in his chair. Okay, that's good. That's important. But Patrick, until this gets cleared up, until this situation resolves itself, I think it's best if you take some personal time, paid leave, just a week or two until everything settles down and gets sorted out. You're benching me because someone lied about me? Patrick felt anger cutting through his exhaustion. I'm protecting you, Gerald corrected, his tone almost apologetic, and the company. If this becomes public, if this turns into some kind of scandal, and you're here working while allegations are flying around, it looks bad for everyone. It looks like we're not taking it seriously. Take the time. Get your evidence together. Clear your name properly, legally, then come back. Your position will be waiting for you. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order dressed up as concern. Patrick walked out of the building 15 minutes later, carrying a box with his personal items, his coffee mug with the world's okayest network admin slogan that Angelina had given him, a photo of them from their honeymoon in Hawaii where they both looked impossibly young and happy, some tech manuals he'd been referencing for a certification. The security guard who'd greeted him cheerfully every morning for 4 years wouldn't make eye contact as Patrick walked past. He checked into an extended stay hotel that afternoon, using the emergency credit card he kept for work travel. The place was better than the motel at least. Cleaner sheets, no obvious stains, a small kitchenette. 2 weeks. He just needed 2 weeks to prove his innocence and get his life back. Everything would be fine once people saw the evidence, once they realized the truth. But as he unpacked his laptop and started pulling together his evidence, organizing files and receipts, a new thought occurred to him, one that made his blood run cold. If Kayla was lying about him being the father, she was still pregnant, which meant there was a real father somewhere, someone she was protecting, someone she wanted to hide so badly that she was willing to destroy Patrick's entire life to do it. Who could inspire that level of protection? What kind of man would be worth sacrificing an innocent person to protect? That's when it clicked. Patrick opened his laptop and logged into their shared phone plan, something he and Angelina had set up years ago to save money, combining their lines with his parents and eventually Kayla's to get a family discount. Angelina had never removed him from the account. She probably hadn't even thought about it in the chaos of the past 24 hours. He pulled up Kayla's number. They'd added her to the family plan 2 years ago when she was going through one of her financial crises, unable to afford her own phone bill. His hands moved quickly across the keyboard, pulling up call logs and text message records. The phone company kept metadata, even if the actual message content wasn't stored on their servers. Who she called, when she called, how long the conversations lasted, all of it was there, archived, time-stamped. And there, in the data spanning from late August through September, was a pattern. A phone number that Kayla called multiple times a day, sometimes conversations lasting over an hour. Late night calls after 11 p.m., early morning calls before 7 a.m. The kind of pattern you'd see between lovers, not casual acquaintances. Patrick's heart was pounding as he ran the number through a reverse lookup service. The results loaded slowly, his internet connection lagging for what felt like an eternity. The name that came back made him grab the edge of his desk to steady himself. The calls were to Derek Morrison, Angelina's boss, the married 52-year-old creative director at Hartwell & Associates, the advertising agency where Angelina worked. The man who'd been to their house for dinner parties, who'd shaken Patrick's hand and complimented his cooking, who'd brought expensive wine and talked about his kids in college, who'd been married for 24 years to a pediatrician named Amanda and seemed to have the perfect family. Suddenly, pieces started falling into place like a puzzle Patrick hadn't even known he was solving. Kayla had been doing freelance graphic design work for Angelina's agency over the summer. Angelina had mentioned it casually in July, said she'd help Kayla get some contract work to help her out financially. Kayla and Derek would have interacted, would have worked together. Kayla, with her habit of seeking validation from powerful men, from authority figures. Derek, with his expensive suits and corner office, and creative director title and all the power that came with it. But why frame Patrick? Why not just keep it quiet, have an abortion, claim it was some random hookup? Why go through this elaborate, devastating performance that destroyed Patrick's reputation and marriage? Patrick leaned back in his desk chair, his mind racing through possibilities. Then it hit him like a freight train, so obvious he couldn't believe he hadn't seen it immediately. Money. Angelina made $62,000 a year. Decent money, solidly middle class, but nothing spectacular. But if she divorced Patrick for cause, for cheating with her own sister, getting her pregnant, she'd be entitled to a much more favorable settlement in California. She could claim emotional distress. She'd get the house, probably without having to buy out his equity. She'd probably get spousal support despite them having similar incomes, because of the nature of the betrayal, because of how sympathetic her case would be to a judge. And Kayla, who'd never held a steady job, who'd always lived off other people's generosity, who was now pregnant with her sister's married boss's baby, she'd need money, lots of it, especially if Derek wasn't going to leave his wife and support her openly, especially if Derek wanted to keep his marriage intact, his reputation untarnished. What better source of money than Patrick's assets, split with her, sister in a messy divorce? Angelina gets the house. Angelina probably gets a settlement. And then Angelina, out of sympathy and guilt for her traumatized sister, shares some of those assets with Kayla. Meanwhile, Derek stays safely hidden, his reputation intact, his marriage undisturbed, his career untouched. It was brilliant, really. Diabolical, but brilliant. Frame Patrick for the pregnancy. Angelina divorces him in righteous anger, takes everything. Angelina splits the assets with Kayla out of sympathy and guilt, probably without even questioning it, because she's so focused on being angry at Patrick. Derek remains hidden, pays Kayla child support quietly through some arrangement, and everyone wins except Patrick. The only problem with their perfect plan was that Patrick had proof he wasn't even in the state when Kayla claimed it happened. Proof he hadn't put together yet during that dinner, because he'd been too shocked, too devastated to think clearly. Proof that would blow their entire scheme apart. But there was still one question gnawing at Patrick. Did Angelina know? Was she in on the conspiracy from the beginning? Or was she just as much a victim of Kayla's lie as he was? Patrick pulled up Angelina's call logs next, his hands shaking again, but this time not from shock or fear, from anger, from the cold, burning determination to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. What he found in those logs would answer that question, and the answer would determine everything that came next. The phone records showed something Patrick hadn't expected, something that made his stomach turn. Starting the day after the conference in San Diego, September 18th, the same day Angelina got back, there were a series of short calls between Angelina and Kayla. 3 or 4 calls per day, each lasting between 2 and 7 minutes, exactly the kind of duration you'd expect for quick updates, check-ins, status reports, coordination calls. But there was more, much more. On November 10th, 2 days before the dinner, there was an hour-long call between Angelina and Kayla at 9:47 p.m. And then, just 15 minutes after that call ended, there was a 45-minute call between Kayla and Derek. And then at 11:20 p.m., another 30-minute call between Angelina and Kayla. They were coordinating, planning, making sure their stories aligned, making sure the timing would be right, making sure every detail was perfect. Angelina knew. She'd known all along. She wasn't a victim of Kayla's lie. She was a co-conspirator. Patrick closed his laptop slowly, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The woman he'd loved for over a decade. The woman he'd built a life with. The woman he'd trusted with every part of himself. She'd helped her sister frame him for something he didn't do. She'd looked him in the eyes at that dinner, performed that rage and betrayal so convincingly, and called him a liar, knowing full well that he was innocent. She'd known every single word. Out of Kayla's mouth was a lie, and she'd supported it anyway. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Kayla had done, because Kayla was exactly who Patrick had always thought she was: selfish, manipulative, destructive. There had never been any illusions there. But Angelina had been wearing a mask this whole time. The loving wife, the supportive partner, the woman who'd promised to stand by him through everything, all of it had been an act. Or maybe it had been real once and had soured into something ugly, something Patrick had been too blind to see. Patrick stood up and walked to the window of his hotel room. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple, the kind of sunset that normally would have seemed beautiful. Somewhere out there, Angelina was probably in their house. His house, the one he'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford, celebrating her successful escape from their marriage. Kayla was probably being pampered and comforted by the whole family, playing the victim, soaking up the sympathy. Derek was probably at home with his wife Amanda, relieved that his secret was safe, that his affair had been successfully hidden. They all thought they'd won. They thought Patrick was too devastated, too isolated, too destroyed to fight back. They thought he'd just accept his fate, slink away, maybe fight the divorce half-heartedly, but ultimately give up. They had no idea what he was about to do, because Patrick wasn't just going to prove his innocence. He was going to expose every single one of them, their affair, their conspiracy, their attempt to steal everything he'd worked for. And he was going to do it in a way that left no doubt, no room for excuses, no way to spin the truth into something more palatable. He pulled out his phone and made a call. His best friend from college, Daniel Rodriguez, answered on the second ring. "Patrick? Man, I heard what happened. Angelina's cousin Sarah posted something cryptic on Facebook, and when I called her to ask what was going on, she told me, 'I'm so sorry. This is insane. How are you holding up?' 'I need a favor,' Patrick said, his voice steady for the first time in days. I need the name of the best divorce attorney you know. And I need someone who specializes in fraud cases, because I'm about to burn their whole world down. Daniel was quiet for a moment. You have evidence? I have proof I wasn't even in California when Kayla claims this happened. And I have phone records showing Angelina, Kayla, and Angelina's boss were all coordinating before the accusation. I can prove this was planned, Daniel. I can prove it was a conspiracy to defraud me. Holy shit! Daniel's voice was low, almost awed. Okay, yeah. I'm texting you a number right now. Patricia Winters. She's the attorney who handled my sister's divorce 3 years ago when her ex tried to hide assets. Patricia destroyed him, took apart every lie, every hidden account, everything. She's expensive as hell, but she's worth every penny. Tell her I sent you. Thanks, Daniel. Patrick, whatever you're planning, make them pay. The attorney's office was located in a sleek high-rise in downtown Los Angeles, one of those glass and steel buildings that seemed to reflect the sky itself. Patrick sat in the waiting room the next morning, his leg bouncing nervously, watching well-dressed professionals stride past with purpose in expensive briefcases. The lobby had marble floors and modern art on the walls, the kind of abstract pieces that probably cost more than Patrick's car. He'd used almost all of his emergency savings to afford this consultation, but Daniel had been insistent. If you're going to war, you need the best. Don't cheap out on this. Patricia Winters was not what Patrick expected. She was in her mid-50s with silver gray hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun and sharp blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything about him in the first 3 seconds. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Patrick's entire wardrobe, and when she shook his hand, her grip was firm and confident. Everything about her screamed competence and control. Mr. Rice, she said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her massive mahogany desk. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of downtown LA that probably cost more per square foot than most people's homes. Daniel spoke very highly of you. He said you have evidence of fraud? Why don't you tell me everything, starting from the beginning? Patrick had prepared for this moment. He'd spent the last 3 days organizing everything. Printouts of phone records with calls highlighted in yellow, his travel receipts from Seattle, screenshots of text message metadata, even security camera footage from his hotel that showed him in the lobby during the exact time Kayla claimed they'd been together at his house in Pasadena. He'd created a timeline document, cross-referencing everything. He'd printed photos from his phone showing him at the Cascade medical offices with geotags and timestamps visible. He spread it all out on Patricia's desk, organizing it methodically. My sister-in-law is claiming I got her pregnant. She made the accusation publicly at a family dinner 3 days ago, and my wife immediately filed for divorce the next morning. But I wasn't even in California when the alleged conception occurred. I was in Seattle for work, and I have proof. Patricia picked up the documents one by one, her expression neutral but focused. The afternoon sun streaming through her office windows caught the edge of her reading glasses as she examined each piece of evidence. She didn't rush, taking her time with each receipt, each phone log, each photograph. After what felt like an eternity, she set down the last page and looked at him directly. This is airtight, she said, her voice carrying a note of professional satisfaction. You can prove beyond any doubt that you weren't there. The flight manifests, the hotel records, the geotags. Any one of these would be strong evidence. Together, they're unimpeachable, which means the question becomes, why would your sister-in-law deliberately frame you? And why would your wife support that lie? Because she's protecting someone else, Patrick said. He pulled out another set of papers, the phone records showing Kayla's communication with Derek Morrison, the real father. I have phone records showing she was in constant contact with my wife's boss, Derek Morrison, during the time she would have gotten pregnant. Hundreds of calls, some lasting over an hour. Calls at all hours, early morning, late night. The pattern is clear. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly, genuine interest crossing her features. Derek Morrison, the creative director at Hartwell and Associates? You know him? I know of him. Big name in the advertising world. Married to a pediatrician, 3 kids in college. Very concerned about his reputation from what I understand. He's the kind of man who would pay significantly to keep an affair quiet. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her face. So your theory is that your sister-in-law had an affair with a married man, got pregnant, and decided to frame you to avoid exposing him? Not just that, Patrick said, pulling out the third set of evidence. Angelina and Kayla's phone logs showing the coordination calls. I think my wife is in on it. The phone records show coordination between her and Kayla. Planning calls right before the public accusation, hours-long conversations, then calls between Kayla and Derek, then more calls between Angelina and Kayla. I think they're working together, all three of them, to take my assets in the divorce while protecting Derek's reputation and marriage. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, studying the phone records, cross-referencing dates and times, her legal mind clearly working through the implications. Mr. Rice, what you're describing is conspiracy to commit fraud. If you can prove it, and I mean really prove it, not just circumstantial evidence, then you're not just looking at winning your divorce. You're looking at potential criminal charges against everyone involved. False police reports, fraud, possibly extortion depending on how they've structured things. Good, Patrick said, and he was surprised by the coldness in his own voice, the way it didn't even sound like him anymore. They tried to destroy my life. They turned everyone against me. They deserve whatever's coming to them. Patricia studied him carefully, her sharp eyes reading something in his expression. I need to know something before I take this case, Mr. Rice. Are you prepared for how ugly this is going to get? Because once we start pulling threads, once we start exposing affairs and conspiracies, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Your wife's career could be destroyed. If her boss is fired or forced to resign, she might lose her job too. Your sister-in-law could face legal consequences that follow her for years. Derek Morrison's marriage will almost certainly implode, and his professional reputation will be ruined. Are you prepared to be the person who sets all of that in motion? Patrick thought about Angelina's face at that dinner, twisted with rage and disgust that seemed so real. He thought about sleeping in that motel while she lived in the house he'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. He thought about his colleagues avoiding eye contact with him, his family members blocking his number, the way his mother-in-law Catherine had looked at him like he was garbage. He thought about being escorted out of his own office like a criminal. Yes, he said simply, I'm prepared. They made their choices. They chose to lie, to conspire, to destroy an innocent person. I'm just going to make sure the truth comes out. What happens after that is on them. Patricia nodded slowly, something like approval in her expression. Then let's get started. First things first. We need to secure your financial assets. If your wife is planning to take everything, we need to make sure there's something left to fight for. Do you have any accounts she doesn't have access to? Just my work retirement account and one savings account she doesn't know about. I started it years ago for emergency car repairs. Kept adding to it whenever I had extra money. There's about $8,000 in there. Smart, don't touch it. That's going to be your war chest for legal fees and living expenses. We'll also need to freeze any joint accounts to prevent asset dissipation. That might make her angry, but I don't care, Patrick interrupted. Do whatever you need to do. I'm not letting her steal money from our accounts to pay for the lawyers she's hiring to steal everything else from me. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you have not, because the ending of this story will blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you think Patrick should do next. Patricia worked fast. Within 48 hours, she'd filed a response to Angelina's divorce petition that included his alibi evidence and a motion to freeze all joint assets pending investigation of fraud. She'd also hired a private investigator named Raymond Cole, a former LAPD detective who specialized in infidelity cases and had a reputation for being thorough to the point of obsessive. Patrick met Raymond at a coffee shop in Silver Lake 3 days later. The place was one of those hipster establishments with exposed brick and artisanal coffee that cost $7 a cup. Raymond was in his early 60s with gray hair and a weathered face that suggested he'd seen every type of human behavior and been disappointed by most of it. He wore jeans and a leather jacket, looking more like someone's cool uncle than a private investigator. He ordered black coffee and got straight to business, pulling out a tablet before he'd even fully sat down. Your lawyer filled me in on the basics, Raymond said, opening a notes app. Alleged pregnancy, false accusation, possible affair with the boss. Here's what I need from you. Everywhere you think they might have met. Every location Kayla mentioned hanging out this summer. Any trips your wife took without you? Any unusual expenses on credit cards? Any changes in behavior? Staying late at work, new clothes, different grooming habits, suddenly interested in her appearance. Give me something to work with. Patrick had already prepared notes on his phone. Kayla did freelance work at Hartwell and Associates from June through September. My wife would have introduced them. She's the one who got Kayla the contract work. There's a hotel called the Maritime Crown about 2 miles from the agency. Angelina mentioned once that Derek sometimes takes clients there for off-site meetings because they have private conference rooms. If they were meeting secretly, that's where I'd look first. Raymond nodded approvingly, making notes. Good instincts. Hotels like that are common, private, anonymous, easy to claim you were there for business if anyone asks. What else? Angelina took 3 business trips this summer that I thought were legitimate at the time, but now I'm wondering if they actually were. One to San Francisco in July for what she said was a conference on social media marketing. One to San Diego in September. That's the one where Kayla claims I got her pregnant, supposedly for another marketing conference, and one to Santa Barbara in October for some kind of agency retreat. She said they were all for work, but I never saw any of the usual conference materials she usually brings back. No folders full of handouts, no branded merchandise, no photos with coworkers. I'll verify those. Check if her agency actually had events in those cities on those dates. Companies file expense reports, register for conferences. There's a paper trail. If they didn't, Raymond let the implication hang in the air. What about financial irregularities? Changes in spending patterns? Angelina started spending more in August and September. Nothing crazy, nothing that raised immediate red flags, but more expensive clothes from places she didn't usually shop. Better hair salon visits. She started going to some place in Beverly Hills instead of her regular salon. More makeup, nicer perfume. I noticed but didn't think much of it at the time. She said she needed to look professional for some big pitches the agency was working on, and that made sense to me. Or she was competing with Derek's wife for his attention, Raymond said flatly. Classic affair behavior. Women either neglect their appearance because they're distracted and emotionally unavailable, or they obsess over it because they're trying to impress the affair partner. They want to look perfect every time they see them. He made notes on his tablet. Give me a week. I'll find out exactly what Derek Morrison has been up to. And if your sister-in-law has been staying at any hotels, if there are any social media posts she thought she deleted but didn't, any paper trail at all, I'll find it. People always leave a trail, always. Patrick left that meeting feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not just hope that he'd clear his name, but hope that justice, real, concrete justice, was coming. Hope that the truth would actually matter, that evidence would prevail, that he wouldn't be destroyed by lies. But he wasn't just sitting around waiting for Raymond to work. He had his own investigation to conduct, his own evidence to gather. Patrick still had access to the home security system. He'd set it up himself 2 years ago when their neighborhood had experienced a rash of package thefts. Cameras at the front door, back door, and garage, all connected to cloud storage. Angelina had never been tech-savvy enough to know how to remove his access, or even that she should. The account was in his name, linked to his email. She probably hadn't even thought about the cameras in the chaos of the past week. He logged in from his laptop at the extended stay hotel and started scrolling through footage, methodically going back through months of recordings. September, October, November. Hours and hours of mundane comings and goings. Angelina leaving for work at 8:15 a.m. every morning. Angelina returning home around 6:30 p.m. Their neighbor's orange cat crossing the yard. The mail carrier. The Amazon delivery driver. Nothing unusual. Then he saw it. November 9th, 10:47 p.m. 3 days before the dinner, 3 days before his entire world exploded. A car pulled into his driveway, not Angelina's silver sedan, but a black luxury SUV, some expensive model Patrick didn't immediately recognize. The driver's side door opened, and Kayla stepped out, followed by someone else emerging from the passenger side. The angle wasn't perfect. The camera was positioned to capture package thieves, not detail everyone who visited. But Patrick could make out enough details. Male, tall, well-dressed, even at that late hour. The man looked around nervously before following Kayla to the front door, like he was checking to see if neighbors were watching. Angelina answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the door. There was a brief conversation on the doorstep, too far away for the camera's audio to pick up clearly, just muffled voices. And then all three went inside. The door closed. The driveway sat empty. Patrick's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He fast-forwarded through the footage, watching the timestamp tick by. 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. The man didn't emerge until 1:23 a.m., nearly 3 hours. When he left, Angelina walked him to his car, visible in the camera's range. They stood close, too close, talking. Patrick could see their body language, intimate, familiar, comfortable. Then Angelina reached up and adjusted the man's collar, an intimate gesture that made Patrick's stomach turn. The kind of gesture you make with someone you're close to, someone whose appearance you care about. The man got in his SUV and backed out of the driveway. As his headlights swept across the front of the house, illuminating everything in their path. Patrick got a clear view of the license plate. He paused the footage, took a screenshot, enhanced the image until he could read every character clearly. Then he ran it through a DMV lookup service, the kind that exists in legal gray areas, but that private investigators and bail bondsmen use all the time. The SUV was registered to Derek Morrison at an address in Manhattan Beach, one of LA's most expensive neighborhoods. Patrick sat back, his mind racing through implications. Derek had been at his house, in his home, 3 days before the accusation, conspiring with Angelina and Kayla to destroy him, planning the details, making sure their stories aligned, coordinating the public humiliation. The rage that filled him was white-hot and all-consuming, threatening to drown out rational thought. But underneath it was something colder, something more dangerous, something calculating and patient. He saved the footage to 3 separate backup drives, then uploaded copies to a secure cloud server with end-to-end encryption. Then he started looking through older recordings with fresh eyes, searching for patterns he'd missed before. Evidence he'd been too trusting to notice. August 15th, Kayla's car in his driveway at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. She stayed until 4:30 p.m. Angelina was at work. Patrick remembered because he'd called her around 3 p.m. that day to discuss dinner plans. What was Kayla doing there alone for 2.5 hours? August 22nd, the same black SUV in his driveway at 7:45 p.m. Patrick had been working late that night. He remembered because it was the evening of a major server migration, and he hadn't left the office until after 10 p.m. Derek and Kayla meeting at his house while he was gone. They left together at 9:20 p.m., the SUV backing out with both of them inside. September 3rd, all 3 of them, Angelina, Kayla, and Derek, arriving together in Derek's SUV at 8 p.m. Patrick had been in Seattle that night, in the middle of his audit. They stayed until nearly midnight, hours and hours of conspiracy, of planning, of plotting his destruction. The pattern was unmistakable, clear as day. They'd been planning this for months, not weeks, using his home as their meeting place, plotting his downfall while he worked overtime to pay the mortgage on that house, while he worked himself to exhaustion trying to secure their financial future. Patrick created a comprehensive timeline document marking every meeting, every suspicious visit, every piece of evidence with timestamps and screenshots. When Raymond called 4 days later, Patrick had 20 pages ready, organized, cross-referenced, and annotated. "I've got news," Raymond said, his tone suggesting it wasn't good news for Angelina and her conspirators. "First, the business trips. I called Hartwell & Associates, spoke to their event coordinator by pretending I needed to send a follow-up gift to Angelina. Hartwell & Associates did not have events in San Francisco, San Diego, or Santa Barbara on any of the dates your wife traveled. No conferences, no client meetings, nothing. The coordinator was very clear about it because she handles all event registrations. She said Angelina wasn't even on the approved travel list for those months. Can you prove where she actually was? Working on it. I've got hotel records being subpoenaed through Patricia. That'll take a few more days, but we should have them soon. But here's the interesting part. Kayla was in San Diego the same weekend as your wife's supposed conference. I found Instagram posts she made and then deleted after a few days. But nothing's ever really deleted from the internet. She was at the Maritime Crown Hotel September 14th through 16th. Same property, same dates. She posted a sunset view from what I've identified as one of their beachfront rooms. Very expensive rooms, by the way. Over $400 a night. Patrick felt his jaw clench. And Derek? Derek Morrison used a company credit card at a restaurant 3 blocks from that hotel on September 15th at 8:30 p.m. Dinner for two, bill came to $347. Expensive wine, premium steaks, dessert. He told his wife he was at a conference in Sacramento that weekend. She confirmed it when I called her yesterday, pretending to be from his office trying to verify some travel reimbursement paperwork. So all three of them were in San Diego together while I was in Seattle, completely oblivious. Looks that way. And there's more. I pulled phone records for Derek Morrison, had to call in a favor with someone who owed me. Cash changed hands. Don't ask me the details. But Kayla isn't the only one he was calling regularly. He and your wife have been in contact constantly since June, sometimes 5, 6 times a day. Calls at lunch, calls in the evening, calls during work hours. That's not normal for a boss and subordinate, unless they're either working very closely on projects or they're having an affair. Patrick was quiet, absorbing this new information, feeling the full weight of betrayal settle over him again. Are they having an affair? Angelina and Derek? Can't prove it yet with absolute certainty, but the pattern suggests either an affair or an extremely close working relationship that crosses professional boundaries. Either way, it's suspicious as hell, given everything else. But here's what I can tell you. Derek's marriage is already on shaky ground. I talked to a neighbor who knows Amanda Morrison, Derek's wife. Apparently, they've been sleeping in separate bedrooms for about a year. There's tension there. So if Derek was looking for someone else, well, your wife fits the profile. What about the pregnancy? Is Kayla actually pregnant? Or was that part of the lie too? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I haven't been able to confirm it independently yet, but I did find something interesting. Kayla made an appointment at a women's clinic in Culver City last week, place called Westside Women's Health. I've got a source there, one of the administrative staff I've worked with before, who confirmed she came in for a consultation but didn't go through with any procedures. She left with brochures about paternity testing and prenatal care. Paternity testing. The words sparked an idea in Patrick's mind. If we could get Derek to submit to a paternity test, it would prove everything. It would conclusively demonstrate that he's the father, that Kayla lied about me. He'd never agree voluntarily. No man in his position would. But if you filed a motion claiming fraud and demanding a test to prove you're not the father, the court could compel him to test as well if you can demonstrate he had opportunity and motive. Especially if you can prove he was having an affair with Kayla. The court won't want an innocent man being held responsible for another man's child. Patrick thought about the security footage, the hotel records, the phone logs, the coordination calls. What if we could prove they were all together, planning this? What if we had them on video? Raymond's eyes sharpened with interest. Do you have video? I have security footage from my own house showing Derek, Kayla, and Angelina meeting multiple times over several months, including 3 days before the public accusation. Hours-long meetings, late-night visits, everything time-stamped and saved. You beautiful bastard, Raymond said with genuine admiration, something like pride in his voice. That's not just evidence of an affair. That's evidence of conspiracy. That's them meeting to coordinate, to plan. Can I get copies of everything? Already made them. Patrick slid a USB drive across the table. There's also a comprehensive timeline document matching the video footage to phone records and financial transactions. Everything's time-stamped, cross-referenced, and organized chronologically. I've even included notes about where I was during each meeting, work, Seattle, wherever, to prove I had no knowledge of what was happening. Raymond plugged the drive into his tablet and started scrolling through the files, his expression growing more intense with each passing minute. Finally, he looked up at Patrick with something approaching respect. This is prosecutable. I mean, actually criminally prosecutable. False accusations, conspiracy to commit fraud, Potentially perjury if any of them have made statements under oath in the divorce proceedings. Your wife's lawyer is going to lose their mind when they see this. Derek's going to panic. This is airtight. When do we show them? Not yet. We need a few more pieces first. I want to establish the affair, beyond any doubt, get hotel records with both their names, credit card statements showing Derek paying for things for Kayla or Angelina. I want financial records showing if any money changed hands between them. And I want to know exactly what Kayla told her doctor about the pregnancy. Medical records can be subpoenaed in a fraud case, and if she told them something different than what she's telling your family, that's more evidence of lying. How long will that take? Another week, maybe 2 at most. But Patrick? Raymond's voice turned serious, his casual demeanor dropping away. Once we reveal this evidence, everything changes. Your wife will know you've been investigating her. Derek will lawyer up immediately. He'll hire the most expensive attorney he can find. Kayla might panic and admit things, or she might double down on the lies, and we'll have to keep fighting. This becomes a war, a very public, very ugly war. Are you ready for that fight? Really ready? Patrick thought about the dinner, the humiliation of everyone staring at him with disgust, the blocked calls and deleted accounts, the way Angelina had looked at him with such convincing hatred, such perfectly performed betrayal. The 3 days he'd spent thinking his entire life was over, thinking he'd never recover from this. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady and cold. Let them panic. Let them lawyer up. Let them scramble to explain away security footage and phone records and hotel receipts. I want to watch them squirm. I want them to know what it feels like to be trapped, to be caught, to have nowhere to run. Good, Raymond said, genuine approval in his voice, because in 2 weeks, we're going to drop this bomb and blow their whole world apart. The medical records arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 10 days after Patricia had filed the motion demanding them. Patricia called Patrick at 7:45 a.m., her voice tight with barely contained triumph, the kind of excitement attorneys feel when they know they have a winning case. You need to get to my office right now, she said without preamble. Drop whatever you're doing. We've got her. We've got all of them. Patrick was there in 20 minutes, his heart pounding the entire drive through morning LA traffic. Patricia was waiting in her conference room, documents spread across the long table like evidence at a crime scene, organized into neat piles. Raymond was there too, along with another woman Patrick didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional attire, gray suit, holding a tablet and wearing the confident expression of an expert. Patrick Rice, this is Dr. Lisa Hammond, Patricia said, gesturing to the woman. She's a medical consultant I brought in to review Kayla's records and provide expert analysis. Lisa, tell him what you found. Dr. Hammond pulled up a document on her tablet, adjusting her glasses. Kayla submitted medical records from a women's clinic in Culver City as ordered by the court. She is indeed pregnant, approximately 18 weeks along as of the filing date. But here's the critical issue. Based on standard gestational dating, using her last menstrual period, and confirmed by both an ultrasound performed at 8 weeks and one at 12 weeks, conception occurred in late July or very early August. Specifically, the estimated conception date is July 28th, plus or minus 3 days, not September. Patrick felt the air leave his lungs. So she was already pregnant, already more than a month pregnant, before she claims Correct, which means her accusation against you is impossible timeline-wise, even if you hadn't been in Seattle during her claimed conception date. The medical evidence conclusively proves you could not be the father based on her own medical records. But there's more. Dr. Hammond scrolled to another document, a clinical intake form with handwritten notes. The clinic notes from her first visit in August indicate Kayla initially came in requesting information about terminating the pregnancy. She was given counseling as required by California law and provided with information about her options. She ultimately changed her mind about the termination, but those notes are part of her permanent medical history. They also note she was anxious about the father finding out and concerned about how it would affect her family dynamics and worried about professional repercussions. Direct quotes from the intake form filled out by the counselor. She knew from the beginning who the real father was, Raymond added, satisfaction evident in his voice. And she knew it was going to cause massive problems. That's why she needed a scapegoat. That's why she crafted this entire elaborate scheme to frame you. Patricia leaned forward, her sharp eyes gleaming. We've also received the subpoenaed phone records as of yesterday afternoon. The pattern is even more damning than we thought. Derek Morrison and Kayla had 63 calls in July alone, the month conception occurred, including several that lasted over an hour late night, early morning, during work hours. The texts, while we can only see metadata since the content isn't stored, show hundreds of messages exchanged between them. And here's the kicker. On July 28th, the estimated conception date, Derek's credit card shows charges at a boutique hotel in Malibu, the Seabreeze Inn. Very exclusive, very private, very expensive. Rooms start at $600 a night. She slid a photo across the table, a printed screenshot. The Instagram post showed a sunset over the ocean, photographed from a balcony, with the caption, "Sometimes you need to escape from everything." In the reflection of the sliding glass door behind Kayla, barely visible but unmistakable once you knew what you were looking for, was Derek Morrison, shirtless, visible from the shoulders up. She forgot to check her reflection, Raymond said with deep satisfaction. Posted it, left it. Up for about 6 hours, then deleted it when she realized. But I recovered it from an archiving service that saves Instagram posts. Amateur mistake for someone trying to hide an affair. Patrick stared at the evidence, years of rage and pain crystallizing into cold, clear purpose, into absolute certainty. What's our next move? We go nuclear, Patricia said, a fierce smile on her face. I've prepared a motion to dismiss Angelina's divorce petition on grounds of fraud, malicious prosecution, and abuse of process. We're also filing counterclaims for emotional distress, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit fraud. We're going to present every piece of evidence, the medical timeline, the hotel records, the phone logs, your security footage, Derek's credit card statements, everything. And we're demanding that Derek Morrison be deposed under oath and submit to court-ordered paternity testing. What about criminal charges? Can we pursue those? That's above my pay grade as a civil attorney, but I've already been in contact with an old friend in the district attorney's office. They're very interested in the false accusation angle. Making a false accusation of a sex crime in California is a serious offense. It can carry up to a year in county jail and significant fines under Penal Code 148.5. And if we can prove conspiracy between Angelina, Kayla, and possibly Derek, Patricia's smile was sharp and predatory. Let's just say your wife and her sister might want to start looking at plea deals to avoid jail time. Dr. Hammond spoke up, her tone clinical but concerned. I should mention one more thing that may be relevant. The clinic notes indicate Kayla was specifically concerned about high blood pressure during her pregnancy. Her readings at her last visit were elevated, 140/92, which is borderline hypertensive. She's being monitored for preeclampsia, which is a serious pregnancy complication. The stress of a prolonged legal battle could potentially make that worse, though I'm not saying that to dissuade you, just to provide complete information about what you're dealing with. Patrick felt a brief flicker of concern. He wasn't a monster. He didn't want actual physical harm to come to anyone. But then he remembered Kayla's face at that dinner, her tears that seemed perfectly calibrated, her perfectly performed devastation. The way she'd pointed at him and accused him of something so heinous while knowing she was lying. His sympathy evaporated like water on hot pavement. When do we file the motion? Tomorrow morning, first thing, Patricia said, organizing her papers with practiced efficiency. I wanted you to see everything first, to review all the evidence, to be absolutely certain you want to proceed down this path. Because Patrick, this is going to explode. It's going to be in the news. Derek Morrison is a public figure in the advertising world. Hartwell and Associates is a major agency. This has all the elements the media loves. This is going to destroy reputations, end careers, possibly lead to criminal convictions. Derek's marriage will implode. Angelina's career is probably finished. Even if she doesn't face charges, who's going to hire someone involved in this kind of scandal? Once we pull this trigger, there's no calling the bullet back. No settling quietly. This becomes public and permanent. Patrick thought about the night he'd spent in that motel, staring at a water-stained ceiling, feeling like his life was over. He thought about his mother-in-law's disgusted face, the way she'd looked at him like he was something subhuman. He thought about Angelina calling him a liar while knowing the truth the entire time, performing for an audience. He thought about being escorted out of his own office, losing his reputation, losing everything he'd built. "File it," he said without hesitation. "File everything. I want everyone to know the truth. I want everyone who turned their backs on me to know they were wrong. I want Derek Morrison's wife to know what kind of man she's married to. I want Kayla's child to grow up knowing exactly what his mother did. File it all." The next morning at 9:00 a.m. sharp, Patricia's office electronically submitted their comprehensive motion to the Los Angeles County Superior Court. By 11:30 a.m., Patrick's phone started buzzing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Reporters, journalists, bloggers. By noon, the story was on legal news websites. By 2 p.m., local news was picking it up. Angelina's attorney, a woman named Rebecca Thornton, called Patricia 6 times in the first hour alone, each call more frantic than the last. At 2:15 p.m., Patrick got a call from an unknown number with a 310 area code. He answered on speaker with Patricia and Raymond listening, recording everything. "Patrick, it's Derek Morrison." The voice was strained, desperate, completely different from the confident creative director Patrick had met at dinner parties. The sound of that voice, the voice of the man who'd destroyed his life, who'd conspired to frame him, who'd used his home as a meeting place to plot against him, made Patrick's jaw clench. But he kept his tone neutral, even. "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Derek. Please, just listen for 1 minute, just 60 seconds, that's all I'm asking." Derek's voice was strained, almost breaking. "I know you filed some kind of legal action. I know you have evidence. I'm calling to ask you, to beg you not to do this. My wife, my kids, they didn't do anything wrong. They're innocent in all of this. Can't we work something out? Please? Your wife doesn't deserve to know you've been cheating on her for months," Patrick interrupted, his voice cold. "Your kids don't deserve to know what kind of man their father really is, that he's the kind of person who impregnates his subordinate sister and then help frame an innocent man for it? I made a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. I know that. I'm not trying to excuse it, but going public with this, dragging everyone through court, destroying families, it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to undo what happened. What if we could work something out privately? I have money, significant money. I could compensate you for everything you've lost. Your legal fees, your pain and suffering, everything. Name a number. Please, let's settle this quietly." "For what?" Patrick's voice went even colder. "For trying to frame me for getting your mistress pregnant? For conspiring with my wife to destroy my reputation and steal my assets? For using my home as your meeting place to plot all of this while I worked overtime to pay the mortgage? How much do you think that's worth, Derek? Because I'm thinking your entire career and your 24-year marriage is a pretty good start. But honestly, I don't think any amount of money's enough." There was silence on the other end of the line, broken only by Derek's heavy breathing. Then, "You don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand the consequences. People are going to get hurt. Innocent people." "I understand perfectly," Patrick said. "I'm exposing the truth. I'm making sure everyone knows exactly what you and Angelina and Kayla did. And you know what? The only innocent person in this situation is me. Everyone else made choices. See you in court, Derek." Patrick hung up. Patricia was grinning widely. That was either very stupid or very smart of him. If he's offering money, that's basically an admission of guilt. We can use that. I'll note this call in our records and include it in our evidence file. "He's panicking," Raymond said, pulling out his phone to make notes, "which means he's going to make more mistakes. The question is whether Angelina and Kayla panic too, or if they try to stand their ground." They got their answer that evening. Patrick was back at his hotel room, trying to eat dinner, trying being the operative word because his appetite had been non-existent for days, when his phone rang. This time it was a number he recognized. Angelina, his wife, the woman who'd promised to love him through everything. He let it ring 3 times before answering, steeling himself. "Hello, Angelina." "Patrick, Her voice sounded raw, like she'd been crying for hours. But he didn't trust it. Not anymore. Every tear, every emotion could be performance. Patrick, we need to talk. Please. Can we meet somewhere? Just the two of us. No lawyers, no family, just us? Anything you want to say to me can be said through our lawyers. That's how this works now. No, please, I need to explain. I need you to understand what really happened. It's not what you think. It's so much more complicated than... Explain what? Patrick interrupted, his voice hard. How you and your sister conspired to frame me. How you used our home to plan my destruction. How you've been coordinating with Derek Morrison for months. How you looked me in the eyes at that dinner and called me a liar while knowing every word you said was false. Which part did you want to explain, Angelina? Because I have phone records, I have security footage, I have witness statements. Which part of that am I misunderstanding? The silence on the other end lasted so long Patrick thought she'd hung up. Then in a small voice, "You're wrong. You don't understand what really happened. There's context you don't have. There are reasons." Then enlighten me, but do it under oath in a courtroom, because that's where all of this is heading now. That's where you're going to have to explain everything to a judge. Patrick, if you go through with this, you're going to destroy so many lives. Kayla's pregnant and stressed, and her blood pressure is already dangerous. Her doctor said she needs to avoid stress. Derek's kids don't deserve to have their family torn apart over this. They're in college, they're good kids. This isn't their fault. My parents, they're in their 60s, Patrick. This kind of scandal could... Your parents already chose a side. Patrick cut her off, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. They chose to believe a lie without even giving me a chance to defend myself. They called me names. They threatened to call the police on me. They looked at me like I was garbage. So frankly, Angelina, I don't care what this does to them. They made their choice. Please. Angelina's voice cracked, genuine emotion breaking through, or maybe just better acting. If you ever loved me, if any of our 8 years together meant anything to you at all, please don't do this. We can work something out. I'll drop the divorce. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want. I'll sign whatever you want me to sign. Just please, please don't destroy everyone's lives over this. Patrick felt something twist in his chest, a phantom pain from a wound that was still bleeding. For just a moment, he remembered the woman he'd fallen in love with in college. The woman who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and held his hand during scary movies and promised to build a life with him. The woman who'd cried happy tears when they bought their house. The woman he thought he'd grow old with. Then he remembered her face at that dinner, twisted with performed rage, calling him a liar while her sister cried fake tears. He remembered the coordination calls in the phone records. He remembered her walking Derek to his car at 1:23 a.m., adjusting his collar with casual intimacy. No, he said quietly but firmly, we can't work this out, because you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. There's a difference, Angelina, a big difference. Patrick? He hung up before she could say anything else. 5 minutes later, right on schedule like they'd coordinated, and they probably had, Kayla called. Patrick didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice high and desperate. Patrick, it's Kayla. I need to talk to you about what happened at the dinner. Please call me back. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. I was confused and scared, and I said things that weren't entirely true. I panicked, okay? I panicked and I said the first thing that came into my head, and then it spiraled out of control, and I didn't know how to take it back. If we could just meet somewhere, just you and me, I could explain everything. I could tell you why I did it. Please, I'm begging you. Don't let this go to court. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. I'll make it right. I'll do whatever you want. Just please call me back. Patrick played the voicemail for Patricia, who immediately saved it and added it to their evidence file. She's cracking, Patricia said with satisfaction, and she just confessed on a recorded message that she lied about you. This is exactly what we needed. This voicemail alone could be grounds for criminal charges. The next 3 days were a blur of legal maneuvering, strategy sessions, evidence organization. Angelina's attorney tried to have the evidence suppressed, claiming the security footage was obtained illegally and violated Angelina's privacy. The judge disagreed in a preliminary hearing. Patrick had every right to security cameras on property he owned, and Angelina had no reasonable expectation of privacy for visitors to the exterior of the home. Derek's attorney tried to argue that he was irrelevant to the divorce proceedings and shouldn't be compelled to participate. The judge disagreed again and ordered him to appear for deposition within 10 business days. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in Patrick's situation. The bomb everyone had been waiting for, the one that would make this truly public, dropped on Friday afternoon. Patrick was meeting with Patricia to prepare for his own deposition next week, going over potential questions and practicing his answers, when her assistant burst into the conference room without knocking, something she'd never done before. "Turn on Channel 7, she said breathlessly, reaching for the remote herself. "Right now. They're running the story." Patricia grabbed the remote from her and switched on the TV mounted on the conference room wall. The local news was showing a breaking story with the dramatic headline, "Prominent ad executive embroiled in pregnancy and paternity scandal." The anchor, a polished woman in her 40s, was speaking in that practiced, serious tone news anchors use. Derek Morrison, creative director at the prestigious Hartwell & Associates advertising agency, has been placed on indefinite leave amid allegations of an affair in a complex paternity dispute. According to legal documents filed this week in Los Angeles County Superior Court, Morrison allegedly conceived a child with 29-year-old Kayla Reynolds while Reynolds' older sister and her husband were going through a contentious divorce. The husband, Patrick Rice, claims he was falsely accused of paternity as part of an elaborate fraud scheme to take his assets in the divorce. Rice has provided evidence, including phone records, hotel receipts, and security camera footage, allegedly showing Morrison, Reynolds, and Rice's wife, Angelina Rice, meeting to coordinate their stories. The story continued for almost 3 minutes, laying out the basic facts of the case. They showed professional photos of Derek from the agency's website, confident, successful, wearing an expensive suit. They showed the exterior of Patrick and Angelina's home in Pasadena, though they carefully blurred the house number. They even had a brief statement from Hartwell & Associates saying they were conducting an internal investigation into allegations involving a senior employee and take these matters very seriously. Patrick's phone immediately exploded. Texts from colleagues he hadn't heard from in weeks. "Dude, I just saw the news. Holy shit. I'm so sorry we didn't believe you." Calls from reporters asking for interviews, for comments, for exclusive statements. Messages from distant relatives who'd blocked him after the dinner, suddenly wanting to hear his side of the story. His college roommate, "Patrick, I saw the news. Angelina did what? Call me immediately." Patricia muted the TV and turned to face Patrick. "Well, it's officially public now. No going back. The cat is very much out of the bag. How do you feel?" Patrick watched the news coverage in silence. Seeing his name on television, seeing his story being told to thousands of people, they were framing him as the victim, the wrongly accused husband fighting back against a conspiracy. Part of him felt vindicated, validated, proven right. But another part just felt exhausted, emotionally drained. "I feel like I want this to be over," he said finally, honestly. "I want justice, but I also want to move on with my life." It will be soon. Derek's deposition is scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m. That's when we'll get him under oath and on the record about everything. And I have a feeling he's going to cave fast now that this is public. His reputation is already destroyed. His career is hanging by a thread. His marriage is probably over. He has every incentive to settle quickly and make this go away. She was right. Sunday evening, exactly 48 hours after the news story broke, Patricia called Patrick with an update. "Derek's attorney just reached out. They want to settle immediately. Derek will agree to paternity testing without being compelled, will make a public statement acknowledging he's the father of Kayla's child, and will pay substantial damages for defamation, emotional distress, and your legal fees. They're offering $250,000. Patrick felt his hands start shaking, not from nervousness, but from the sheer weight of vindication finally arriving. "What about Angelina and Kayla? What about criminal charges?" Angelina's attorney is scrambling. She wants to drop the divorce petition entirely with prejudice, meaning she can never refile these specific claims, and is willing to sign a comprehensive settlement agreement that the house and all marital assets remain in your name. She'll take only her personal belongings, her car, and her own retirement account. Kayla's willing to make a public video apology that can be used in court or released to media. That's not enough, Patrick said immediately. Not nearly enough. Patricia paused. What do you want, Patrick? What would be enough? Patrick thought about it carefully, really thought about what justice meant, what would make him whole. He could push for criminal charges, watch Angelina and Kayla potentially face jail time, drag this out for months or years in criminal court, destroy them completely and utterly. Or he could take a different path, one that gave him closure and freedom without turning him into someone he didn't want to be. I want Angelina to sign an agreement giving me full ownership of the house and all our joint assets except for her personal belongings, her car, and her retirement account. That's fair. I want Kayla to make a public statement, video recorded with a notary present, admitting she lied about me, explaining exactly what she lied about, and apologizing fully and specifically. Not some vague, I made a mistake nonsense. She needs to say clearly that she falsely accused me of fathering her child. I want Derek to pay $400,000, not $250,000, $150,000 to me for damages and emotional distress, $150,000 to a charity supporting falsely accused individuals. I'll choose which one, and $100,000 to cover all my legal fees with any remainder going to me, every penny accounted for. And the criminal charges? Patrick took a deep breath. I won't pursue them unless they violate the terms of the settlement in any way or ever contact me again for any reason. But I want the right to press charges held in reserve indefinitely, forever. I want an agreement that if they ever speak about me publicly, if they ever defame me again, if they ever violate our agreement, I can immediately file charges with the DA. They get to live with that hanging over their heads, forever. Patricia smiled slowly, approval evident in her expression. You've really thought about this. That's smart. That's strategic. It gives you protection and leverage without turning you into the vengeful ex-husband. I'll draft the settlement terms tonight and send them over first thing tomorrow morning. The settlement was finalized on Wednesday of the following week. Derek's attorney delivered a cashier's check and a signed, notarized statement acknowledging paternity and apologizing for his role in the situation. Kayla's video apology was recorded in Patricia's conference room with 2 witnesses and a notary present. 5.5 minutes of her, looking pale and exhausted and genuinely frightened, admitting she had lied about Patrick, explaining she had been afraid to reveal the real father's identity, and apologizing to Patrick for the immeasurable pain she'd caused him. Her hands shook the entire time. Whether from genuine remorse or fear of criminal prosecution, Patrick couldn't tell and didn't particularly care. The video went semi-viral when Patricia's office released it to the media to counter some of the ongoing coverage and speculation. The comments were brutal toward Kayla, people calling her every name imaginable, analyzing her body language, questioning every word. Patrick found he didn't feel much satisfaction from it. He didn't feel vindicated by strangers tearing her apart online. He just wanted it to be over. Angelina signed over the house on Friday afternoon at the title company. Her attorney and Patricia present as witnesses. She showed up wearing sunglasses that hid most of her face, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from crying. Her hands trembled as she signed document after document. She wouldn't look at Patrick directly, keeping her gaze fixed on the papers in front of her. When all the papers were signed, when the house was legally his alone, Angelina hesitated at the door. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were devastated and hollow. Patrick, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you. Patrick looked at her, really looked at her, the woman he'd loved for over a decade, the woman he'd built a life with, the woman who'd promised to stand by him through everything, the woman who'd helped try to destroy him. I don't forgive you, he said simply, his voice emotionless. And I don't hate you. I just, I don't feel anything anymore when I look at you. And maybe that's worse than hatred. Maybe that's the real consequence of what you did. You turned love into nothing, into empty space where something used to be. Angelina's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks, her composure completely breaking. But she nodded and left without another word, her attorney following quickly behind her. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. 3 months later, Patrick stood in the kitchen of his house now, fully and legally and irrevocably his, making coffee on a Saturday morning in early spring. The space felt different without Angelina's things cluttering the counters, without her schedule magnets on. The fridge, without her presence filling the rooms with habits and routines he'd grown accustomed to over 8 years. It felt clean, fresh, peaceful, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, like he could finally breathe fully for the first time in months. His phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Drinks tonight? Want to celebrate your first week back at work and toast to new beginnings?" Patrick smiled, a real smile, not forced or bitter. Gerald had called him 2 weeks after the settlement, apologizing profusely for not believing him initially, for putting him on leave, for not having his back. He'd offered Patrick his position back with a raise to $110,000, a promotion to senior systems architect, and a written apology that acknowledged the company's failure to support him during the accusations. Patrick had considered refusing on principle, but ultimately decided he'd worked too hard to let them drive him out of a career he was genuinely good at. He texted back, "Yeah, sounds good. 7 p.m. at that place in Silver Lake?" Another text came in, this one from Raymond. "Thought you'd want to know. Derek Morrison's wife Amanda filed for divorce yesterday. She's going for everything. Full custody of the kids, the house, his retirement accounts, everything. Also, Kayla had the baby 2 weeks ago. A boy, healthy, 8 pounds. Derek's lawyers are already negotiating child support. Looks like he's paying around $7,000 a month." Patrick set down his phone and walked out to his back patio with his coffee. The morning was beautiful. Clear blue sky, temperature in the mid-70s. Birds singing in the trees. He sat down in his new patio furniture, replacements for the set he and Angelina had picked out together, and let the sun warm his face. Derek would spend the next 18 years paying for his choices, watching money flow out of his accounts every month, probably losing most of his wealth in the divorce. Kayla would spend them as a single mother, her reputation destroyed, her relationship with her family fractured beyond repair. Raising a child alone. Angelina had moved back in with her parents, her career essentially over. No one in the advertising world would hire her after the scandal, and she'd been quietly let go from Hartwell and Associates. Her dreams of building a successful career in marketing were finished. They'd all gotten exactly what they'd tried to do to him. Loss of reputation, loss of relationships, financial consequences, careers destroyed, just delivered by their own actions rather than by any revenge Patrick had orchestrated. He hadn't had to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. Karma, it turned out, didn't need much help. It just needed truth. It just needed patience. It just needed someone to shine a light on the lies and let natural consequences unfold. Patrick took a sip of his coffee, watching a hummingbird visit the flowers Angelina had planted last year, and that Patrick had decided to keep. They were beautiful, and they weren't responsible for what Angelina had done. He'd learned something profound through all of this, something that had cost him dearly, but that was worth more than any amount of money. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was letting people face the natural consequences of their own actions. It was refusing to sink to their level, refusing to let their ugliness turn him into something ugly. It was maintaining his integrity while they lost theirs. The past was the past, and his future, whatever it looked like, was going to be built on truth, on genuine connections, on hard-earned wisdom about who deserved his trust and who didn't. He'd been given a harsh but valuable lesson in human nature, in the masks people wear, in the difference between image and reality. Patrick finished his coffee and stood up, stretching in the morning sun. Somewhere in the distance, He could hear kids laughing, a dog barking, a neighbor mowing their lawn, the sounds of normal life continuing on, indifferent to individual dramas. He went inside and started making plans for his day. He had a home improvement project to finish, refinishing the hardwood floors to make the space truly his. He had a certification exam to study for that would advance his career. He had dinner plans with Daniel tonight. He had a life to rebuild, better and stronger than before. They'd tried to destroy him. Instead, they'd freed him from a life built on lies, from a marriage that had been hollow, from people who'd never truly valued him. And that, Patrick realized as he pulled out his floor sanding equipment, was the greatest justice of all. Sometimes the best lesson life teaches isn't about revenge or forgiveness or even justice. It's about understanding that when people show you who they really are, when they tear off their masks and reveal the ugliness underneath, you should believe them the first time. And then you should walk away, not in anger, but in gratitude that you finally know the truth. Patrick had lost his marriage. He'd lost his innocence about human nature. He'd lost a year of peace and stability. He'd lost the fantasy of the life he thought he was building. But he'd gained something far more valuable, the unshakable knowledge of his own worth, the strength that comes from surviving betrayal and coming out the other side with his integrity intact, and the wisdom to never again confuse someone's mask for their true face. And as he worked on his floors that Saturday morning, in the house that was truly and completely his, with a future that was entirely his own to shape, Patrick understood something profound and liberating. He hadn't just won the battle. He'd won his life back. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever be.